Welcome everyone. Today we'll be looking at some of the most creative and also powerful builds in Path of Exile 2 Early Access. Looking behind me, there's a demonstration, right? Look at the speed of this Sonic build. I'm literally calling this one the Sonic build because look how fast this one goes. And yes guys, this is not hyper increased speed of replays. This is how the build plays. And this is a super powerful, wait for it, this is a Deadeye build. So this is not a Gemling Legionnaire, this is not a Monk build, but rather this is a Deadeye build stacking over 960 dexterity, which means insane attack speed, skill casting, and also dashing around the map and clearing this entire map within about 13-15 seconds. And yes guys, this build is incredible, and this is one of the first builds I want to be showcasing to you guys in a variety of builds that will be combined with some of the best creativity and also different gaming playstyles for a variety of different classes. And of course, in the future guys, we will have a video to show the full guide of how to build for this build, what are the stats required, and what are the gears required for this particular setup. And this build will be using Flicker Strike together with Frozen Lotus and also Charge Staff to do something like this. You also have auto trigger spells like Cast on Shock, and also having so much agility or dexterity means you have insane attack speed, casting, and also mobility using this particular setup. And of course guys, this build will be using items like Astromantis and also unique item that scales with increasing dexterity for this super speedy build that clears the map in about 15 seconds, and look at how powerful it is, right? Now over here I do want to give a big shout out and also thank you for 10 friends in Flickr for sharing this build. And yes, in our future videos we'll have a focus guide in learning this build. So coming over to our next build. Now if you guys want to try that build or if you want to get started, we do have a previous build that is quite similar that uses lightning powers but rather more of a traditional Deadeye. This Deadeye is something that allows you to one-shot the screen with any tier of the map, and this Deadeye is quite durable. Now of course this is not a stat stacking Deadeye, but rather this is an auto trigger lightning and also freeze Deadeye that one-shots pretty much everything on the map. And yes, we'll have the links to the Deadeye builds available, and currently this one-shot Scream Wipe, Lightning Rod Deadeye is one of the strongest in the meta. So should you want to play a Deadeye, you can get started with this Deadeye one-shot build, and then later move into the stat stacking Deadeye build that rolls around in the map. And yes, both of the Deadeye builds will be available for you guys to have a look, and this will be the start of our adventure and some of the best builds in Path of Exile 2. Now on the topic of creative build, over here we have another creative Titan build, and this is a one-shot Titan. You might have heard in the live stream developers were talking about those one-shot Titans, and yes, I managed to find one, and over here we're learning from King Kogger over here, and you can see this one-shot Titan build literally one-shot all the Pinnacle bosses. And here is a tier 18 Pinnacle boss. You can see this build is pretty amazing, and the combination is of course with Hammer of Gods. So this build pretty much one hammer done. And there you go. So yes, this build looks pretty incredible, and yes, I am planning to learn a similar Titan build, and you can see the action of this build in mapping. Not only does it one-shot, it also one-shots the entire map. So again, a very popular and also creative build coming from the Path of Exile 2 community, and I'm really excited to be learning similar builds for us in the future. And we're looking into what are the best gears and what are the choices for this build. And of course, the power of this build is coming from the Hammer of the Gods, together with the ability to Stampede and also Herald of the Ice. So against the boss, you're literally one-shotting them after you have the initial setup. And this is pretty amazing. So not only this build works against bosses, it can also work against a variety of different maps. So again, going through the demonstration, you can see after a few setups, when the boss is summoned, it gets one-shotted with a small delay. And there you go. So the ability of this build to clear map AoE with Stampede and also Herald of Ice also allows this one to be an amazing mapping build. So again, a big shout out and also thank you to King Gogo over here for sharing this build, which I definitely will be planning to learn once we go into the Titan class. Now on the topic of a great Titan build, we also have a similar build from Akira over here that uses the Titan with Herald of Ice. So a lot of the content creators and also even developers themselves admitted that Titan might not be the strongest class. But as we can see in the demonstrations, there are a lot of creative build that allows for this. And notice over here, this is going to be a Titan, and wait till you see the abilities of the Titan. Yes, it one-shots the entire screen again with Herald of the Ice. Now over here, our content creator friend have a different adjustment. So he's not really using the Hammer of the Gods, but rather he's focused on map clearing. So yes, the Titan class can do this, and it looks amazing. It makes you feel very powerful as a warrior class to have a lot of life. So notice over here, the life of this particular character is 4,000, and sometimes it stacks over 5,000 life. So you're super durable, super tanky, and yes, you're basically one-shot everything on the map, and it feels amazing to be going into Titan in this particular format. And of course, it is likely the developers will be buffing the Titan class in the future, so expect even higher powers with the future patches. Now, some of the highlights for this alternative Titan build is that we're using Herald of the Eyes with the Ancestral Warrior Totem and also Stampede as the 6th link spell. And this build does not use Hammer of the Gods, and which allows this build to be even more amazing in terms of map clear AoE and also faster travel through mapping and then one-shotting everything as you go across the map. And you love the explosion, right? So the massive AoE explosion makes the Titan build very satisfying as everything explodes on the map. And yes, of course guys, all the builds that we demonstrate over here will have the links available should you want to follow those content creators like Aka over here to be learning this build. And in the future, I'll be having focus guide as we learn those builds step by step, and also what are the best items, what are the choices of gems, and what are the abilities and also gearing for those particular builds. Now, on the topic of a great build, have you seen a Pathfinder build with over 100% bonus movement that doesn't look back behind explosions? So yes, this is one of our auto-casting the Flash Pathfinder build that can stack over 100% movement speed. You can literally see the dashes of the characters. This character has the ability to be blinking around together with tons of mobility and also ability to one-shot everything in tier 18 map with a poison cloud. You're also auto-casting poison. That means you'll be triggering corpses with your unique boots that auto-cast poison. And you can see, every time you throw one poison cloud, everything dies on the map. The build itself is incredibly fast and also mobile and can clear any tier 18 map within 1 minute, or sometimes 2 minutes if you get lost. And this build is amazing. This build uses the effect of stacking quiver effects with massive poison AoE, and the poison damage is amazing for both mapping and also against the boss. So fast forward into a tier 18 boss fight, and over here you can see as we get to the 10 stacks, the boss will melt within seconds. And of course, that's not only all right. Against any of the pinnacle bosses, you can do something similar. Because you have so much movement speed, over 100% bonus movement speed coming from the unique chest, you can dot the boss in 1 to 2 seconds, dodge all the spells, and there we go. Now it's a pinnacle boss. So yes, this build is incredibly good in both mapping, leveling, and also against any of the boss. And the damage over time is amazing, and the boss pretty much dies within 2 seconds, and then you get to see the animations over here. And of course guys, for this particular build, we're using the Pathfinder with Poison Concoction. We do have a video guide about this build, should you want to follow this build and also try out the Pathfinder with a lot of mobility. We also have the links to the key items for this build, should you want to look into the budget for this build, and also how to have this build against the boss, against the mapping, even with a secondary weapon set. Now on the topic of a great build, of course I am a Summoner's Man. So over here I want to come over to Oscrax over here, who was said to be the first witch character to hit level 100. So this build will look at how a player can get to level 100 as a summoner. And the first thing you can notice, yes, he is blinking around with tons of skeleton archers or skeleton snipers. So the leveling build for one of the fastest leveling, I would say, for the summoner class will definitely still comes with the skeleton snipers. Over here, a content creator friend talked about the ability to summon and also resummon units because of the weapon swap, and if you don't know how to do this for better mini AI, make sure you watch the links below, which I'll teach you guys how to do this. So he'll be blinking around, traveling around, then resummoning his skeleton snipers right on top hordes of enemies, and this fixed the inability for the minions to follow up, and the ability for the skeleton snipers to deal massive map-wide AoE with faster projectiles is what allowed this build to be wonderful. Of course, he's also summoning Raging Spirit using the Flame Wall, and his skeleton snipers are 5-socketed or 6-link with a physical damage combo. And this pretty much one-shot everything on the map that allows him to be super mobile with Blink, and then with a combination of the skeleton snipers with a lot of abilities, now 6-link for even high damage and also even greater survivability. You can see on the side that his shield is over 15,000 once he gets all the Grim Harvest stacks. So yes, this is also an elemental or energy shield build that stacks a lot of defense in this sense. He did not go for Chaos Incantation, so he's still susceptible to Chaos damage, but the damage itself and also sustain coming from the Energy Shield is enough to allow him to tank any content. And again, if you guys want to follow this build, you can check out in the links below. Now, of course, coming back to the Summoner builds, we do have a lazy Summoner build that is hands-free. So if you guys sick of clicking on buttons and using the summoners, we do have a variety of summoner build that uses both the skeleton snipers and also uses the skeleton electric mages or the stone mages. So over here, one of our previous guides showcased a build that pretty much 90% of the time, you don't have to be casting any spells, and you'll be one-shotting enemies through the negative resistance you debuff them with minus 200% lightning resistance. And this allows you to be using the skeleton stone mages and pretty much one-shotting everything on the map. The best part about this build, similar to the previous one, is you are getting a lot of energy shield. And in this sense, you don't have to cast anything. Well, you're not really blinking, you're just walking around and everything will be melted by your skeleton stone mages, and this means this is more of a hands-free, carefree build. You are quite durable and you have a lot of sustain. Because you also have the skeleton cleric, they can also resummon your minions should they die to something accidental. And of course, this build is tailored towards those of us that doesn't want to click all the buttons, that can't be bothered with summoning fire spirits, and that just want to walk around as a summoner, as a lazy necromancer. And yes guys, we have covered this build in one of the previous videos, and should you want to follow this one, you can see all the links related to this one and some of the other creative builds. Now, still on the topic of summoners and also infernalists, because I love the summoning units, we also have one of the tankiest summoners build in the game. So notice over here, over there, you can see close to 20,000 elemental shield or energy shield, and with 1 HP means that you're also immune to chaos damage. So this is by far one of the tankiest build available for the summoners, and you can become unkillable in pretty much any of the maps. So how this build works is you're getting some of the best energy shield items together with the ability to stack even high energy shield through Grim Fist. And as a demonstration, this build can also tank and also be super durable against any bosses in the game, which allows you to play the summoner even safer and also with tons of sustain. Now, during the recording of this video, you can see our content creator that we're learning from is still using the skeleton arsonist, which was later nerfed. So if you want to follow this super tanky elemental shield summoners build, you can see the links below for our alternative should you want to use the skeleton snipers. And this build does have a mapping version and also a bossing version of the build to allow for even higher damage and also even greater maximum fire resistance. So yes, not only do you have tons of energy shield, close to 20,000 energy shield, you also converting damage into chaos, which are immune to the damage. You're also converting damage to fire, which you have over 90 or close to 90% fire resistance or maximum fire resistance. I do believe the maximum fire we can get is 90%, and this allows a build to convert a lot of damage and also have massive damage reduction. Now coming over to a Chronomancer build, and yes, this is gonna be a time freeze Chronomancer build that also uses summoning units. So let's have a look over here. So this monster or this boss, those bosses were time frozen for over 17 seconds. And that's pretty creative, right? So this was covered in one of our previous videos, and what you can see is everything is frozen for over 17 seconds. And what we're learning from is we're learning from Better over here, and we have talked about this build, and he has made even a more adjustment to allow him to combat over 15 million of HP bosses using the Chronomancer and also the Summoner. How the build is working is that he is stacking a lot of energy shield before the fight by killing his skeleton warriors. And once he comes to the fight and get the setup ready, when the bosses are summoned, he will time freeze them combined with tempo chains. And because the time freeze ability coming from the Chronomancer is incredibly powerful against bosses, you can see that even though his summon's newness damage is a little lower, while the bosses are not moving right. So again, I do want to showcase a variety of different cool builds, and I still want to come back to this one because I believe if we have a PvP system for Path of Exile 2, like the PvE for Path of Exile 1 or PvP, where you go to the Hell of the Grandmasters, this build can be one of the builds that kills us. Because if he was in the system and time freezes us for 10 seconds, well, none of your things can do anything. Unless you're super tanky, then you get time frozen. So yeah, this is such a cool build, and I still want to showcase this one in the variety of summoner build together with a Chronomancer demonstration of how every class can also be a summoner. Now, of course, guys, if you want something similar and also powerful as the Summoner with the Skeleton Snipers, we do have a Boss Slayer build that clears maps in pretty much one-shotting the whole map. And this build is quite of a budget build. Compared to the previous setup, this build has the ability to one-shot most of the pinnacle bosses within 2 seconds, and this build doesn't require anything too fancy or too special. The builds also have abilities to use Mind Over Matter to convert damage into mana, which I am blocking a little bit, so you can see we're constantly gaining mana through killing enemies, and then the mana is protecting this build. And because the build is quite beginner player friendly, and the build doesn't require all the expensive items coming from the energy shield, this can be one of the starting builds should you want to play the summoners. And this build also have a magic fund version if you want to go into 250 or even 400% magic fund against the boss for some bonus loots. Now I know I have talked about a lot of summoning builds, so over here we're going to look into Infernalist, which allows for another variety of build, including the Detonating Dead. So here we'll be learning from Space Gold, and what you can see is this is a demonstration of an Infernalist that doesn't have to really rely on the summoning units. So what's happening over here is, yes, he does have summoning units, but the biggest highlight is he's exploding and also dropping them through Detonating Dead. And as you can see, this build has some pretty decent AoE, and as the monsters appear in front of you, you're pretty much one-shotting them with Detonating Dead. So through the demonstration, you can see that the Infernalists have a variety of arsenals and also tools, and one of the biggest highlights is using the Skeleton Brute and also Detonating Dead to allow you to be sacrificing them and also dealing a lot of damage to enemies. So in this sense, you're a Necromancer that now sacrifices your minions and then dealing additional damage in doing so, which is quite creative. So should you guys want to follow a Detonating Dead with a summoning units build, you can definitely check this build out. Now, one of the best part about being an Infernalist is that not only you can summon units, you can also do this. So have you seen our previous video guide where the Infernalist now uses Infernal Flame to be auto-casting infinite Comets? And as you can see over here, this is pretty incredible, right? So you can go into the demon form +6 to all your spell ranks and then just do this. You have infinite regeneration of energy shield through the usage of multiple stacking of charge gain through the flask. And with Internal Youth, you're gaining energy shield non-stop as you use your potions. And you're gaining potions non-stop. So this build is incredibly fun and also pretty broken if you have a look at this. This was also one of the builds that was mentioned by the developers in the livestream because they no longer look into damage per second. They look into columns per second. And we're looking over 10, 20 or even 50 columns per second. And of course, this build is incredibly powerful against the boss as well. So you can see over here with a Brave swap up with the gems, you can go into the boss with all the columns auto-casted. So let's have a look at a demonstration of this build against the Pinnacle boss with over 20 to 30 million HP. Again, this build is incredibly powerful because as you hold down your buttons, all the skills are pretty much auto-casted. And you're shooting so many columns against the boss is frozen and then destroyed within 3 to 5 seconds. And that was a Pinnacle boss. So briefly summarize how this build works. And we do have a guide video should you guys want to dive deeper into the mechanics and also how to build this particular build. It is not expensive, simply because even though this build uses some of the unique items, it does not need a weapon because you cannot use weapons in demon forms. And this build has the ability to be gaining a lot of life through the use of Flask, which is not a meta item or meta modifiers that most other builds use. So how are we auto-casting those spells is through Barrier Incubation, which allows us to be auto-casting columns as we deal damage and also damage our own shield. And as we damage our own shield, you'll be constantly auto-casting spells as you gain energy through the trigger gems. And as you deal even higher damage to yourself, you can then pop your health potion, which now recovers energy shield. And this infinite loop allows you to pretty much AFK through the map. All you have to do is moving around while holding down your buttons, and this happens, and it is pretty powerful. So yes guys, this is one of the latest builds we have just posted, and all the builds and also all the links is available should you want to follow this amazing Infernalist build. Now after posting our latest video, we do have one of the viewers sending me this link about the similar build with Iva Makova over here. We have learned from her in the previous guide through last epoch as I recall. So as we look at this similar Gemling Legionnaire build, which allows you to pretty much destroy your FPS. Yes, this build is so auto-casting and so crazy. You're casting so many things at once, it will destroy both the server and the FPS. So this is just a demonstration. I do not recommend following this build just in case this build gets nerfed in the future, because the developers have said that if you are destroying the FPS of the server, those builds can still be nerfed. But it is amazing. You're casting so many different spells and you're screen wiping the entire map, and you don't even have to be an Infernalist. But the downside is, as you can see, the FPS is definitely a problem. So what you can see is, part of the video, she is moving super slowly. It is creative, I'll give you to that. It is creative and it goes to 1 FPS. So yes, some of our viewers have been recommending me to have a look at this build. I'm a little hesitant to learn and also teach you guys this build, because I don't want you to be investing into a build and then it gets nerfed because of the FPS issues. So in the future, as we learn different builds, we'll also look into the FPS and also graphics card requirement, because some of the Path of Exile 2 build is pretty amazing, but it gets too out of hand, the system overloops with too many spells, and this happens. But nevertheless, should you want to follow her, I'll have the links available for you to check out this auto-casting looping Gemling Legionnaire build with over 100 corners per second. And yes, it kind of breaks the game. Now, on the topic of a good Gemling Legionnaire build, we also have this stacking build that is this. And yes, that was a pinnacle boss, guys. That was a pinnacle boss with over like 10 million HP. So what you can see over here is this build does not require movement speed, because it does this. Looks very similar to the build we saw earlier with the stacking with the Deadeye build. So this build will use the strike ability, which allows to be dashing around and then doesn't require any movement speed. And this build is some of the strongest stacking Gemling Legionnaire build. And again, guys, you have over 500, 700 dexterity with over 700, 500 intelligence, and to be scaling so much with your increased damage, and the build itself will require you to be just dashing around by casting abilities. And if you guys want to learn and also look into some of the great Gemling Legionnaire stacking build, I will be teaching you guys with a number of those. So this is one of the first demonstration, which you are auto casting multiple spells and then dashing around without needing any mobility onto your boots. Because your spells itself is scaling with attack speed, the higher attack speed you are, the more faster you're dashing towards enemies, and the faster your attack speed is, you can be map wiping or clearing maps within seconds as you dash around and destroy enemies with your auto casting abilities. And yes, guys, this build was posted about a week ago. It does have the links available should you guys want to follow this stacking Gemling Legionnaire build. Now, at the same time, we have just posted one of the Infinite Blink Gemling Legionnaire build that combines with Spark that wipes 2 map screens and also with Infinite Blink. So in this sense, you can be using Temporalis to have Infinite Blink with the ability to scale massively up to 500% onto your quiver and stacking with a Gemling Legionnaire build with over 800 of your intelligence together with tons of mana. The ability of this build to use Mind Over Matter, Infinite Blink, and also the Spark makes this build one of the strongest build for the Gemling Legionnaire for the latest meta using the Spark. So if you enjoyed a Spark Sources or Spark Stormweaver, this might be the build for you. It is extremely mobile, it destroys all the tier 18 maps, and just to show you guys how good the maps is, we have purposely found a demonstration map with everything juiced up to tier 18 with a base tier 16 Delirious map with all the maximized modifiers that we can find to make the monsters even stronger. And even with that, we're destroying monsters across 2 screens and everything's getting one-shotted. And of course, fast forwarding towards the boss, you can see this Blink Spark Gemling Legionnaire build is pretty much one-shotting most of the tier 18 bosses. And this is also the similar case once you come over to the pinnacle bosses. And yes, guys, we love to use the bridge bosses demonstration, and you can see this is the over 20-30 million HP tier 18 pinnacle boss. And it was destroyed pretty rapidly, and the build has so much survivability and also utility, which is very amazing to be going with the Gemling Legionnaire and also the Spark and also Blink together for the latest meta. Now I know what you guys might be thinking, hey Matt, I just want to be a traditional Spark player and I want to go with Stormweavers. And yes, we do have a previous high-end Spark build that does pretty much this. You don't have to be blinking around, you can just be casting firewalls and sparks, and this will melt everything on tier 18. This Spark build is coming from one of my friend Royal, who posted this build a few weeks ago, and it is still one of the top meta build available in the game. simply because firewalls, sparks, and also the right ability and also right unique choices together with the juice allow you to be super durable and you have tons of sustain. This build has some of the highest effective HP and also massive in-game scaling throughout the ability to stack even higher mana and also gain higher damage using the Archmage. So if you want a traditional Spark build, we do have a Spark build that is available, and this is one of my best videos because as you can see, this is a super deep dive behind the mechanics of the Spark build with close to 1 hour video. And we have everything that's related, even the related items will be available for you guys to learn and also to search for those items for this particular build. Now, I would like to say I saved the best for last. So in combining with all the strongest thing in the meta, what do we have? It is the infinite blinking, everything auto-casted with the Bloodmage. That's right, guys. This build is one of the strongest build currently in the meta because you have 0 skills on your skill bar. All you're doing is just blinking and everything's auto-trigger, auto-casted. You are one-shotting everything on the map and it looks pretty frantic, right? Because you're infinitely blinking with Temporalis and you're basically looping and also constantly casting spells as you critical hit. So how this build works is you have multiple ways of cast on critical, together with using a unique amulet that allows you to cast on critical, then looping non-stop. This build has over 15 to 100 million DPS. And that was a pinnacle boss with 2 men. So let's have a look at some of the demonstrations of this build that is insanely broken. I still think this is one of the best builds because you have crazy amount of life recovery. You pretty much have super sustain with energy shield, maximal life, and also mind over matter for your mana that defend you. So one of the biggest highlights for this build is you can be taking down any map in under 60 seconds. Because you're infinitely blinking, everything's auto-casted. For the Bloodmage, you have 3 ways of gaining additional life, additional energy shield, additional mana through overcapping those with the Life Remnant, with Grim Fist, and also through Mana Remnant. This build also scales massively with increasing life that gives you increasing critical damage by coming into the Bloodmage Ascendancy. And finally, the build is super mobile and you're just basically blinking everywhere and everything will be destroyed within 1 shot through auto-casting abilities. So over here, as you can see, my friend was able to blink into the boss in less than 60 seconds and destroy this particular boss, and everything is auto-casted. Now, what is the drawback of this build and why did I keep it to last? It's because this build might be too broken for the game. So this is an over 200 million HP boss with 6 men. And what you can see is the build is over looping so much, it actually froze the game for 1 to 2 seconds and then boss is one-shotted. So if you guys recall, the developers have said that some of the super broken build that auto loops and auto cast that too much that lags the server could be potentially nerfed. So the only drawback for this most broken build in the game is that it could potentially be nerfed in the future patches because it loops too much and it can be too broken. But nevertheless, this is one of the best demonstrations of the most powerful and also broken build that is available in Path of Exile 2. And you can see this build can literally do bridges 360. So he can loop around from one side of the circle to the other side of the circle, and before the circle finishes, he can loop around again. And this allows you to do any content in the game with insane ability and everything's auto-casted. Now, of course, a big thank you to my friend Royal for sharing this build, and we do have a variety of different setups for the bossing and also for reducing the FPS or fixing the crashes due to the multiple looping. So make sure you check out this guide should you want to follow this build, and also check out Royal because he has some of the best amazing in-game builds for Path of Exile 2 for any of the class. Now, hopefully you guys enjoy this mega summary of some of the best builds in Path of Exile 2 at the moment. And I'll be looking to learn some of those amazing builds, including this supersonic Deadeye build that travels across the map and clears a tier 15. I do believe this is a tier 15 map within 15 seconds. So yes, big thank you to all the content creators for sharing this build, and all the available links to those builds and also the content creators will be available should you want to follow them and also learn and also understand those cool builds that is available in the game. Now, because you can see we have over 10 and also 15 different builds that's available that we can learn from, make sure you let me know in the comments below, guys, which of the build you want to learn first and which of the class you want us to be learning next. Is it going to be the Titan? Is it going to be the Deadeye? Or maybe the Monk in the future? So please let me know in the comments below, or maybe send me a direct message onto Discord. And should you find a cool build and you want to showcase to everyone and also learn about the build, I can also speak Chinese and also speak English, so I can be translating and also learning those builds together with you guys if you want to send me those links, and we can be learning some of the coolest builds in Path of Exile 2. Again, it looks amazing as it dashes around, and I do love a fast build that just does something bonkers. So let me know what you guys think about those builds and which one is your favorite. Now hopefully you guys found today's video helpful. Again, a big thank you to everyone on YouTube, especially our supporters and also those of you guys who's been supporting me on Patreon as well. And we do have a new feature on the Mattjestic YouTube channel. If you click onto this, you can become a member. Yes, I've added this just recently, and this will allow you to have early access to videos that is posted a few hours or even half a day earlier if you want to watch those videos a little early. But yes, this will cost money. So please be aware the membership will cost money. And if you do want to watch videos normally, those videos will still be available after 6 to 12 hours, normally on the time we post those videos. And I do want to say a thank you and also welcome to our latest YouTube members over here as well. And thank you for supporting me, guys. And I'll be aiming to post at least one Path of Exile video a day, and this will be including guides, tips, news update, and also the latest tricks that is discovered on both the English and also Chinese community to keep you guys updated. And if you like those videos, make sure you leave a nice comment and also leave a like for those videos. Now before we finish, if you guys haven't subscribed, this is a really good time to do so, because I'll be looking into the latest Path of Exile 2 news on different communities and also on our official forum, official webpage. I'll also be looking into the best build for each of the class as the meta develops with the Chinese and also the English community. So stay tuned for the latest update and also guides for Path of Exile 2. And of course, this is gonna be a big month for us. And I'll try to bring you guys all of the latest content and also guides for Path of Exile 2 to come.